Years ago, I made a video titled The IST in Racist, and I was talking about the term racist and racism in general, things like that. And so this is going to be kind of a redo, I guess. I'm sure I have that video somewhere on an old flash drive. That YouTube channel is long since been gone. But I think I got the video somewhere on a flash drive. But I was just going to make a quick one right here because it's just real simple. The point I want to make: racist. In the dictionary, racist is termed, someone who's hateful or has racial hatred towards somebody of different races or whatever than from themselves. No, it doesn't. I don't care what the dictionary says, because I understand prefixes and suffixes. Now, of course, I'm not an expert on the English language, and I have a hard time pronouncing words myself. And sometimes I don't know the definition of certain words, and I have a hard time spelling certain words. But I know what a prefix is, I know what a suffix is. And the prefix in the racist, of course, is race, and the suffix, of course, is ist. So does that mean if you're a race-ist, then you have racial hatred for somebody that's a different race than you or whatever, or hatred for other races? So does that mean a bicyclist hates cars? How about a pianist? Do they hate guitars and drums? There is no connotation of hate in the word race or in the suffix ist, ist. Ist, if you look it up, the suffix, you look up the definition, just simply means someone who's an enthusiast or interested in, like a bicyclist, a pianist, a person who plays the piano or rides a bicycle. They're interested in pianos and those sorts of things, riding bicycles, things like that. Okay, I am a racist in that I am interested in race and genetics. Now, I know a lot of people, they say, well, there is the only difference in race. The fun one is when people say race is a social construct. And now they pull out, gender is a social construct. Don't believe that bullshit. It's all a bunch of crap to keep us all divided and to trigger those who are of weak minds. So anyhow, a racist is someone who's interested in race and the genetics of race. And it's not just a social construct, and it is much more than skin color. It's not just the color of your skin. When you think about a German Shepherd and a Saint Bernard and a Collie, they're all dogs, they're all canines, right? But they have different traits. They have not only different traits of looks, but different traits of behaviors. See, it's the behaviors that you're interested in and not just the aesthetics and the looks, right? The fur color. How about that? So for someone who's interested in race like myself, I'm interested in genetics and DNA and things like that. I find it fascinating. Certainly no expert, but I find it fascinating. I have mixed relatives, and I love them. Now, I used to be a white supremacist, and that's based off of my theology. I was a Christian identist, and I believed in that racial theology. Like the black Hebrews, okay. Well, there's the white Hebrews who think that they're the supreme ones, and that's a whole different story. I've talked about that in videos and things like that, and we'll mention it every now and then. But I am an ex-white supremacist, or ex-white Christian identist, and ex-Christian period. But anywho, as far as being a racist, it just simply means a person who's interested in genetics and genetic traits. Someone will say, well, so-and-so, they can play the piano, they're interested in playing the piano, or they're very musically talented like their aunt so-and-so, or he's really mechanical like his uncle, or what have you, right? And so they'll talk about those things being genetic traits, or, he acts just like his grandpa, even though he's never met him, or, whatever. So there is behavior, not just looks and race. And I find that fascinating. Now, when you speak of racial groups, right, white, black, and all that, you're talking in generalities, right? And then there's genetic traits. You can say the genetic traits of people that are Irish might be different from the people that are French, but they're both white. You have your Ethiopian blacks and, your different forms of blacks, the Zulus or whatever. Even within races, you have different little behavioral traits that seem to be carried on through the genetics, and I think that's fascinating. Again, I will say it like animals, and certain animals, they'll be of the same group, but they're a subspecies, a sub-race. Like German Shepherds are a sub-race from, other dogs, or collies, or border collies, or Labrador retrievers, or what have you. So it's just simply interested in race. Now, if that makes me a hater, I don't give a fuck, because I know it's bullshit. I don't hate other people of other races. When I was a Christian identist, I only went along with that because, I thought that, the white race was supreme. That's a whole different video, but a different topic. But when I got to reading books on race written by very intellectual people, and by the way, they'll say that racist people are ignorant and all this, that, and the other. You know, they live in a trailer park. I lived in trailer parks for years. They fly the Confederate flag, and they're missing some of their teeth, so I guess I'm ignorant. But the funny thing is, I found out I read more nonfiction books than the average, not only college graduate, but the average college professor doesn't read as many books as I do. And I've read books on genetics and genes and things like that, and I just find it all fascinating. It's interesting to me. And so, and I read books on sociology, history, things like that. It's all fascinating to me. I no longer believe that any cause of races fighting other races. But then again, being an ex-Christian, I no longer believe in, we got to fight evil with good and all this, that, and the other. I believe that this world is a world that has everything in it. It has, you can say the different races of people. I knew a preacher used to say the different races of people were like, he wasn't a Christian identity minister, by the way. He was just a regular Christian. And he talked about how the different races were like a bouquet of flowers, right? You don't want all one type of flower, right? So it's not only the looks, but it's traits of the plants, of the flowers, for that matter. And if that's hateful, well, that's because you're fucked up in your head. Because I see the differences and I find it fascinating and it's interesting to me. But no longer do I see it as a cause or anything I need to fight for, or that it's bad, or that one race is horrible over the other. Although the people with the tiny hats are a little irritating, I think, sometimes, a big chunk of them, but even not all of them, right? So when it comes down to, you do want to deal with people on an individual basis. And I've certainly had non-whites that treated me kindly, even when I'm in my white supremacy world days. I'd had, not in the world, but in the white supremacy days, they had, there were some that treated me very kindly, whether they knew I was a white supremacist or not. And a lot of white people treated me like dog shit. So in the white supremacy world and in the Christian identity world, but also just, white folks out in general. So I treat people in a general sense, but I am fascinated. It's just like gender. I do believe in generalities of the only two genders that exist on this planet. And I do believe that there are general things that are true about men and women and their difference, and I think is beautiful. Just like the difference of races, I go back to the old preacher before I became Christian identity. I went to a regular Christian church long before I converted to Christian identity for years, and that would say that the different races represent, different flowers, bouquets. And I went back to that. I see the appreciation. Do I think that race mixing is wrong? No longer do I think that. As an ex-Christian, no longer do I think homosexuality or, lesbians or homosexual men or whatever, that's wrong. No, I don't think that's any wrong as long as it's consenting adults, right? I no longer see any of that sort of thing. But I still am not going to deny nature and genetics and biology. It's fascinating. It doesn't mean that someone that's black is going to be a criminal or a white person is going to be a great, straight up sweet person, because that's not true. There's a lot more to it. But race and genetics is fascinating to me, and I am a racist. I'm proud of that, and I always will be. I'm fascinated by things of nature, including, and then there's genetics with plants, not just humans, but with animals, like I'm saying, plants. I was talking about flowers just a minute ago. Okay, there's different genetics, and it's fascinating to me. It's just interesting, by the way. So being a racist does not make you hateful any more than being a bicyclist makes you hate cars. So think upon that and have a great day.